All right, welcome to a very special live episode of the Mike Sennello Show, where we are going to be focusing primarily on all the nonsense coming in from Hartford. So as you folks may know, now that I'm streaming on YouTube and no longer on my Facebook page that was designed to be specific to New Milford, I do live in the grand state of Connecticut-istan. And you'll have to excuse me here as I turn off, if I mute. It wouldn't be an episode of the Mike Sennello Show if we didn't have any technical difficulties. So we're going to go over, since the new legislative session just began and since we just had our elections into the state offices complete at the beginning of last year, there's a whole lot of bills that are being proposed and that are going into the committee process, which we'll have to go over in an entirely separate stream at some point. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a bill I've already put out a video on. So I will share a link to the actual bill right now, so you guys can follow along at home if that's what you'd like to do. And this bill, of course, is the bill that is being introduced in the Senate by Senator Haskell from Connecticut's 26, that is going to introduce mandatory and compulsory voting. That's right, folks. Vote or pay the fine, unless you want to tell the state why it is you've decided not to vote, which of course is compelled speech. We did a nice long video on all of that. So in fact, it wasn't all that long. It was only about 9 minutes long. And I think we determined that it was a total of at least 3, possibly 4 amendments to the Constitution at the federal level that this is in clear violation of. So when you guys have time, after we're done with the live stream, go ahead and check out this video that I'm about to link in the comments section right now. So as I mentioned, we've already talked about the bill itself in kind of great depth, but the information that came to me, and it came to me basically as I was rendering that video. So the reason we're doing this live, folks, is going to harken back to what I just said, and that is there are so many bills that are utterly insane and are coming to my attention at just lightning speed that I can't really put together a scripted video on all of this. So we're going to do live. We're going to just go through at least and touch up on at least some of the more insane bills that are coming through Hartford live. And at the end, we'll touch up on the 1 or 2 bills that seem to be okay that are coming in through Hartford, one of which is actually a bill to repeal another bill. So, who knows how you want to interpret that as far as that bill is concerned. But we're here to talk about Senate proposed bill number 180 in the Senate, which would impose a $20 fine on anyone who who decided not to cast a ballot beginning in 2024 for any election. And we did describe in that video, according to Title IX, an elector, yes, is you and me, anyone who is legally registered to vote in an election in a town in Connecticut starting in 2024. Title IX makes a clear distinction between the generic electors and presidential electors. So no, we are not talking about I think we're down to 7 presidential electors every 4 years who cast the actual votes in the Electoral College that decide the presidency. No, we're not talking about those. We're talking about you and me are going to be forced to either pay a fine or actually vote, or if we decide not to vote and we don't want to pay the fine, we're going to have to come up with a list of reasons. Yes, now one of those is one of those reasons is a conscientious objector. However, if your rationale for not voting, if you decide not to vote, is pointing to the Constitution, as we showed in that video, pointing to the First Amendment, yes, this is clearly in violation of at least 3 amendments to the Constitution at the federal level, and probably as many as 4. This is also being introduced in the House, basically simultaneously by a member of the House, part of the Democratic caucus, of course, as proposed House Bill number 6328. So I've linked you guys both my video on that bill itself and the text to the bill itself, which we go over in that video. So do check that out. However, like I said, in this rapid fire news cycle, what's actually coming out is, Senator Haskell has actually revealed, the senator who's proposed the a mandatory voting bill, has revealed the true nature of his proposal, which is kind of terrifying and would make Yuri Bezmenov proud. So, folks, we are going to go over to Senator Haskell's Twitter feed, because I don't know if the story at this point is the bill itself or the ulterior motive behind the bill. So you'll have to excuse me while I get the senator's Twitter feed pulled up. So, as we can see here, lots of feedback on my civic duty voting bill today. The most interesting responses come from some friends on the other side of the aisle. They point out that working parents, seniors, people with disabilities, and commuters may not be able to vote conveniently. Now, I would argue that this is a weak argument. You should use the arguments I made in that video. So, senators, representatives, if you guys are watching this video, Billy Mo Buckme, you're my representative, and Craig Miner, you're my senator. If you guys are watching this video, after we're done here, go to that link in the comment section. Go, check out my channel if you need to, and check out the video. There are much better arguments to be made. But this is an argument that that Haskell is pointing out, and what it's going to lead us to is the reality. This feed itself. Here we go. So excuse me, folks, as I mull through my endless technical difficulties. So here he goes on to say, and they are absolutely right. Our voting laws are antiquated. Without early voting and no excuse absentee voting, it's too hard for many people to participate in our democracy. As a result, we celebrate 66% turnout when other nations regularly exceed 90%. So there's a lot to get into on that part of the tweet alone, but he does go on. So no, this bill isn't going to become law, but I hope it started a conversation about how our state can finally assume the responsibility of making sure everyone not only has the right to vote, but has the opportunity to vote. There is so much wrong from an empirical standpoint with this tweet thread to begin with. For the first things first from here, voting is a privilege. And the way we know it's a privilege is that it can be taken away. In fact, you can take it away from yourself. Rights are things you can't even alienate from yourself. How do you alienate your own right to speak? You can't really do that, can you? Right? You still always have the ability to voice an opinion, even if that results in some sort of adverse effect from some outside body. No one can take that away from you. That's why the Christian believers of this world say that rights come from God. You can make the case that they come from the ether and then pre-exist government. You don't have to say that they necessarily come from God. But the point is that no, voting is a privilege, just like your driver's license. Your ability to legally drive a car in Connecticut is a privilege, and it can be taken away. But one easy way to lose your right to vote, your voting privileges, in any state, is to move to another state. If I live in New Milford and I want to vote in New Milford, you know how I can go ahead and not be able to vote in New Milford anymore? I move to Sherman, one town over. Then I can't vote in New Milford. So because it's alienable, it can't possibly be a right. It's a privilege. As Jefferson said, he said unalienable, if we're going to be as literal as possible. The other thing is, I've never been a proponent of this ridiculous idea. As a result, we celebrate 66% turnout when other nations regularly exceed 90%. So what? I don't care who turns out to vote. I don't care how many people turn out to vote. If you decide to stay home, that is up to your discretion entirely. And I'm never going to hold it against somebody for not voting, especially if they feel they're an uninformed voter. Because yes, folks, uninformed votes are much worse than no votes. They're much worse. If I care, as opposed to the other side, I care about why you do things. I don't just care about the end result. I do care about what the pathway that you've taken to get to that end result. This is why one side actually cares about hypocrisy. One side actually cares about principle. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a red or blue dichotomy. I'm not saying this is necessarily a Republican or Democrat dichotomy. But no, I don't care what the turnout rate is in general. I don't have an a prioristic position on turnout rates. I would much rather people go get a library card than they go get a voter card. Or go register to vote. I would much rather you register with the public library to get a library card than you register with the local election commission to get a ballot. I would much rather you become an informed voter than you simply cast your vote. This is a completely ridiculous position. But the thread goes on, and this is where the real news is in terms of this thread. So no. This bill isn't going to become law. So there we have it, folks. His intention was never to actually have this bill become law. As Yuri Bezmenov would be 100% proud of this. This is the very definition of subversion. We're using a bill to subvert, as its own subversion. It's a technique to get something else through. It's a technique to dissuade you from the actual conversation that should be had, and to start going down a logical path that they know is going to help them lead us towards this thing that the other side doesn't want. And let me talk about mail-in voting. Let me talk about early voting. There are flaws to mail-in voting and early voting that don't exist in-person voting. I'm not saying that one is terrible and should never be done. There is a time, there is a place for early voting. There is a time, there is a place for mail-in voting. But there are flaws to this system, and there's a reason in Connecticut we don't have absolutely universal mail-in voting. And we know what this is going to lead to. We know what this is going to lead to. We know this is going to lead us down to the conversation of not only should it be a federal holiday, you shouldn't even be allowed to meet in person, to vote in person. The town of New Milford already ran into this. So my friends coming in from New Milford, we already ran into this last spring when the state basically made it impossible for us to legally hold our town referendum on the budget. We still managed to get our elections in November, but we couldn't hold a referendum we couldn't hold a budget referendum in May of last year, in person at least. Or if I think it was done entirely by mail-in voting. I could be wrong about that. But the point is, we know where this is headed. We know what path this is leading us down. If people if we can extend this COVID-19 lockdown as long as possible, that's the goal. We don't want people to actually be productive members of society. We don't understand the economics of production. We don't understand the thing that builds wealth is people actually going to work and engaging in mutually consensual transactions, which we're going to get into a bit. But that said, I really hope that at some point we get a chime in from our state senators and the representatives. I managed to get one, by the way, from Craig Minor. So let's bring up his response. You'll have to excuse me here, folks, as we get this. Okay, so here is Craig Minor's response. He is my senator from the 30th Senate District. Hey, Mike, unfortunately for those that have suffered financially, struggled with isolation due to COVID risk, and the loss of loved ones, they will now need to endure the onslaught of legislative cheap shots by this senator, who is a radical within Democrat ranks, and others on his team. There is so much we could do to help the people of the state, yet this is what they choose to focus on. I have no plan to support. Maybe it's a misprint. And then Craig goes on to say, I would be shocked if Senate Dems aren't nixing it right now. Many more treasures out there, as he is a prolific bill introducer, and we're going to get into at least one more of them, folks. So good on Craig Minor. Thank you, Senator Minor, for standing in opposition to a bill that is a clear violation of a multitude of constitutionally protected rights. I'm very happy that you've actually gotten a little bit outspoken about this. I'd rather it be more voluntary. I'd rather it be more proactive. And it's interesting that Craig has offered us the insight that this is probably not even going to pass within Democrat ranks, which means that there is the ulterior motive, which may be even the bigger story. And on top of that, we've actually basically just proved that Haskell, in this case, is one of these radicals within the ranks. Now, we're going to get to that in just a minute, but let's start out with this. The R's, if you will, are not moving to their extremes. They're not promoting the radicals within their ranks. The Democrats are electing them to office. And the most radical propositions that within their ranks, the more draconian measures are the ones that are coming to the Senate and House floors. Now, I realize they haven't technically come to the floor. They need to go through committee first before they can be brought to the floor. And as Craig Miners pointed out, it's unlikely that this even makes it out of committee because even the Democrats won't be in support of this bill. But again, that speaks to the falsehood that is this notion that both sides are moving towards their extreme. No, one side is in favor of Jeffersonian democracy. One side is in favor of the federalist system that existed hundreds of years ago and existed for at least decades after that. That is not a new position. New positions would be the positions that are being brought out by the proverbial other side of the aisle. And of course, they don't stop at mandatory voting. They don't stop at that. Because we've got another bill to introduce here, and that's proposed bill number 171, which is going to get this, folks, introduce a property tax. This is, we're going to go over the one that's been proposed in the House. It's also proposed as Senate Bill 808. So there's a complementary bill in the Senate. So here's our bill, folks. House Bill number 171. So let me get that brought up on my end. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives and General Assembly convene, we're going to read the whole thing because it's only 4 lines, that the general statutes be amended to establish a 1 mil statewide tax on commercial and residential real property, provided the first $300,000 of the assessed value of a residential property shall be exempt from such tax. What are we doing here, folks? What are we doing here, folks? If there are any Democrats in the crowd, if there are Republicans in the crowd that are going to be in the Senate or are going to be in the House floor, this is the question I want you to ask. Why do you guys think people are leaving the state? Why do you think people are running out of this state? And yes, people are running out of the state. This is, by the way, this is not a facetious question. This is a serious question. I want to hear their answer. Why do they think people are running out of this state? Now, just so you guys know, 1 mil is 1/1000th of the assessed value. So if the assessed value in this case is $300,000, we're talking about another $300 a year in taxes that you're going to have to pay, in this case to the state. And we all know that it's not going to stop at a limit of $300,000. We all know it's not going to stop at a limit of 1 mil. It's what happened with the income tax at the federal level. It's what happened with the income tax at the state level. All of these things will tend to expand. They will never tend to even hold the line, let alone contract. But again, the real question here that I would love to have answered, because I don't know what their answer would be. Why, honestly, why do you guys think that people are running out of this state? And for the record, yes, we're going to go through the stats because I did a video on this and I'll have to upload it to my channel because it was on a different channel. But yes, people are running out of Connecticut. And I went over why it is that people move. The primary thing that motivates why people move. And I'll have to upload that. So guys, subscribe and stay tuned, right? So here is, excuse me while I get this brought up. I know this is Wikipedia, but it's coming from the Census Bureau. This is Connecticut. So I've ordered these of the 50 states. I've told Wikipedia to order these in terms of net internal migration statistics, net internal migration trends from 2018 to 2019, and relative terms. That's the number on the right-hand side there. There's Connecticut, fifth last. There are 4 other states that had more people leave them in relative terms than Connecticut. Negative 6.19% internal migration. And if you don't like Wikipedia, if you don't like the Census Bureau, maybe we can go to something that's in the private sector. This is National Van Lines. So let's get that window brought up on my end, and you'll see that this is basically just a political map. Where are people moving to in 2020? We got Idaho, we got Colorado, Texas, Arizona, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee. Do these sound like blue states? Let's see where people are running away from. California, Illinois. By the way, this is North American Van Lines does an assessment of when you register with North American Van Lines to reserve a van and then move. Do I have this brought up correctly? Yes, I do. Great. Awesome. Yeah. So Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Michigan, Illinois, Maryland. Do these sound like historically red states or very red states? And by the way, this is 2020. And this is just people who are conducting moves out of these states, which may well mean that the momentary influx that we've had in Connecticut of people leaving New York might be acting as a mitigating effect in 2020. Because yes, people ran out of New York City to come up to Connecticut. It's why you can't find an apartment in Connecticut anymore, or in this town of New Milford anymore, at any price, let alone an affordable one. But let's see if that's actually the case. So let's go to 2019. Oh, there's Connecticut. There's Connecticut back in the red. Let's go to 2018. Okay, we're neutral in 2018. Let's go to 2017. We're back in the red, and we're number 2. So if we go to the bottom here, I'll highlight this for everyone. 62% of their North American moving services, North American van lines moves in Connecticut that involve Connecticut were outbound. Okay, so how about in 2016? Oh, there's Connecticut in the red again. Bottom 5. So top 5, it's 5th place in outbound migration. 2015, 5th place in outbound migration. 2014, 5th place in outbound migration. And in 2013, Connecticut took home the gold. Congratulations, Connecticut, on being the state that everyone is fleeing from. And the thing is that this isn't being made up in some other population trend. Because if we actually, and I won't be able to bring this up, but I'll just read off, excuse me here, while I get me back here into full screen here. If you're wondering what the last few years have looked like in terms of total population in Connecticut, Connecticut's total population in 2014 went down 317, and then in 2015 went down 7,402, and then in 2016, this is all from the Census Bureau, down another 8981, and then down another 4,844, then down another 1,777, then down another 600. It's been down. We have seen net population declines for the last 6 years in this state. So the net internal migration is so negative that it's affecting our overall population. In fact, if we convert that to a relative term and then compare ourselves to other states, here's where we ranked in 20. I'll read them. From 2011, we ranked 43rd. In 2012, we ranked 42nd. In 2013, we were dead last, 50th. In 2014, we were 46th. In 2015, we were dead last again. In 2016, we took the silver medal at 49th. In 2017, we were 44th. In 2018, we were 43rd. In 2019, we're 45th. Why do you guys think it is that we're losing these people? Why do you think it is that people are running out of this state? Honest question. I'd love to hear your answer. And if you're going to come back and say, well, what happened in 2020? And if you're going to say, oh, well, New Yorkers came in from 2020. Yeah, that's what's called a one-time deal, folks. That is a shot in the arm. That's not going to make up for all of the long-term trends. And most importantly, why do you think they're leaving New York? Why do you think they're leaving New York in the first place? And do you think they're really going to stay here in Connecticut if we keep heading down this trend? Well, if we make it completely impossible for people to afford to live here, what are they going to do? And the other thing, because we're going to have this conversation, I know you guys slept through the first day of high school econ 101, but we're going to talk about something called switching costs. Switching costs are, in this conversation, the cost to move. And when we're talking about jobs, there is a cost associated with moving from one job to another, even if you're not moving your location. There's a cost associated with quitting a job and moving on to another job. It may not be the most visible thing in the world, but there is a cost associated with that. In the case of actually moving your home, there's a clear switching cost. It's usually a one-time expense. It's usually something like an exchange of capital assets. So we would move it to the balance sheet rather than include it on our expense list. However, who do you think is going to be able to overcome those switching costs? Honestly, who do you think is going to be able to overcome those switching costs? And while we're at it, since all we're taxing is the people who have homes that are worth $300,000 or more, what do you guys think a $300,000 home looks like? Honestly. So I have a home here that's here in New Milford, $309,000, 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, 1,276 square feet. Let me see if I can quickly pull this in real quick. Add window capture. So Yeah, let's just do that. Whatever. Okay, so this, folks, is a $309,000 home in Connecticut, in New Milford. This is the town I live in. This isn't Westport. This isn't Fairfield. This isn't New Canaan, right? This isn't Darien. This isn't Wilton. This isn't Weston. This isn't Easton. This isn't a crap load of towns that are way more expensive to live in. This is New Milford, Connecticut. $309,000. Let's talk about this. Let's take a look at this listing here on Zillow, right? 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, 1,276 square feet. Is that a huge house? That's a raised ranch. Look at the driveway. Is that a well-maintained driveway, or is that a gravel driveway? That's a gravel driveway. How many acres are we talking about? Oh, we're not talking about a whole lot of acres. 3 bedroom, 2 and 1/2 bath, raised ranch home located in a beautiful neighborhood close to parks and shopping, which is a lie because I know where this address is. The lower level offers a beautiful family room with wood stove, powder room, laundry room. Again, your very basic raised ranch. This isn't a huge house. This isn't something that's extravagant. You want to go one town south of me? One town south of me. Just to give you guys an idea of what one town south of me looks like. So let's see if we got that pulled up. Excuse me. Again, it wouldn't be an episode of the Mike Sennello Show without a whole bunch of technical difficulties. So let's see if I can get this pulled in. Add a window capture. There we go. Again, you guys are going to have to excuse me here while I bring this in. There we go. That's $390,000. That's $390,000. And I'm going to click on one of these photos so you guys can see this. 3 beds, 3 baths, 1,396 square feet. Barely 100 square feet more. This is one town south of me. Yes, it's a little better off in this area. That's not even a raised ranch. That's just a ranch. That's the house we're looking at. That's the type of house that is going to have to eat if it's assessed, and I realize that assessed value is not the sale price. If the assessed value winds up being even $300,000 in this house, that person's going to have to pay an extra $300 a month in a new tax, in a brand new tax. And again, what do you think the response is going to be to this? Do you think that's the person that's going to be able to afford to move down to South Carolina, down to Tennessee, down to North Carolina, down to Florida? Or do you think it's going to be the people that own the $1 million homes? And then we've got these abandoned $1 million homes. And what's going to happen with them? Again, I shouldn't have to get into the Laffer curve here. All I'm having is a discussion on the law of demand, which I did a video on. Check out my channel. I did a video on the law of demand. Okay, we don't even have to get into the Laffer curve. All we have to do is say, we'll use the local hardware store. I'll plug the local hardware store here in New Milford. H.H. Taylor and Son True Value, 85 Railroad Street, 860-354-4441. Give them a call. Check them out. They're open 7 days a week. Okay, the local hardware store decides that they're going to jack up their prices. But they're only going to jack up their prices on, say, the high-end commercial goods. The high-end tools that are used by contractors, the contractor-grade stuff. How many of those things are they going to sell? How many contractor-grade hammer drills are they going to sell? It's going to be a lot less, isn't it, folks? And if we take the number that they sell and multiply it by that new price, it tells us how much revenue they can expect. And we have something that's fairly elastic, like hardware store items. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that margins on things like this aren't that big. There's a reason that places like Taylor's don't just jack up their prices so it's $30 million for a can of paint. Because if they did that, they wouldn't sell any paint. So for that reason, there's a price. There's a limit to how much they can get away with charging people before they start leaving. And that's already happening in the state. So since it's already happening, what do you think is going to happen to the total revenues collected when you raise the price, when you raise the cost of living even further? I mean, I really want to know what the left's take on this is, because this is so basic economics. This is something that your parents should have taught you when you were a child. That when you raise the price of a good, the quantity of demand tends to decline. It's so basic. Andrew freaking Cuomo gets it. This is an article I'm just going to have to read for you guys from the New York Post. Andrew Cuomo's dubious bid to keep the wealthy from fleeing New York. This was August 5th, 2020. So this isn't like Andrew Cuomo, say, 1990, and maybe Andrew Cuomo in 1990 was a little bit more right-leaning. No, this is just last summer. When it comes to socking New York's economy with tax hikes, Governor Andrew Cuomo gets it for now, unlike his no-end-in-sight COVID restrictions. Quote, I literally talk to people all day who are in their Hampton house, who also lived here, or in their Connecticut weekend house, and I say, you got to come back, end quote. He related, he even offered to cook dinner. No luck. They're not returning. Instead, they're thinking, if I stay here, I'll pay a lower income tax because they don't pay the New York City surcharge. He added. So folks on the left, if Andrew freaking Cuomo can get this, I'm failing to see where the disconnect is on your end. Not to mention, it's productivity that creates wealth. The money, the currency, is a means to an end. It is a currency. The thing that builds up wealth is mutually consensual transactions. When you have lots and lots and lots of mutually consensual transactions, which the long arm of the law definitionally isn't, when you have the mutual consensual transactions, that's how you build up wealth. That's how people get rich. That's how people prosper. That's how people become more comfortable. And the places that tend to allow for those sort of things to happen, and that doesn't mean that government shouldn't exist, because there is a extremely limited role for government, right? Farmer Brown decides, Farrier Smith decides to steal Farmer Brown's oats. That isn't a mutually consensual transaction. If they agree to terms of contract and one of those parties doesn't live up to the terms of those contracts, how do you enforce that contract? Well, unfortunately, that's going to mean a very minimal government. However, government isn't a producer. Government is a thing. The introduction of governmental interference with mutually consensual transactions is definitionally an interference with mutually consensual transactions. You might prefer that a little bit is interfered with consensually in some respects in the short run, so that in the long run, you don't have criminality. You don't have contracts that don't get lived up to. You don't have roving hordes throughout your country of basically feudal lords that are paying off mercenaries to conduct their warlike bidding. Government, by definition, is not a producer. Yes, they are a deferral of short-term consent, but it's not the transaction itself. These aren't the things that are mutually consensual transaction. I pay you $10 for the movie ticket. I would rather have the movie ticket, and you would rather have the $10. We both win. That's not how government works, because the thing that separates government from those type of transactions is the gun. If I put a gun to your head and say, I'm going to take that movie ticket, or if I put a gun to your head and say, you're going to charge me X dollars for this movie ticket, do they have a choice? Is that actual consent? No. As a result, the more and more you tend to tax people, the more and more you tend to tax the production side of the equation, the less production you're going to axiomatically have. You're discouraging production. So what are these people going to do to avoid paying the tax on that production? They have no choice, because it's a production side tax, but to leave. So I am perfectly okay, and I would push for this. So senators, representatives, if you're watching this, I would be perfectly in favor of having a consumption-based tax program, because obviously if you're going to have government, you need to have, if it's a libertarian government, it's tiny and its reach is very limited, but that government needs to have some sort of funding mechanism, and that funding mechanism is necessarily always going to be taxation. But if we're talking about a consumption-based tax system, then you guys have got to give up a consumption-based tax system, then you guys have to give up the production side first. We want to see at least one iota of good faith from your side before we start focusing on the consumption side of things. And yes, okay, if you guys want to talk about tolls, fine. First, show us the good faith, because tolls are kind of extremely indirectly a consumption-based tax. However, again, if the idea is to switch from one to the other, then we need to see a sign of good faith. We need to see that you're not just going to endlessly introduce these new bills. And, I would love to see from my senators and from my representatives some form of, I'd love to hear their thoughts on that. And we actually got that from my representative, who, of course, I did not bring in his Facebook post. So we'll just read that real quick. For those of you asking about upcoming bills, there are currently thousands being proposed. This is a fine example of those who believe the solution to our financial crisis. You know what? Let's see if I can bring this in so you guys can follow along. Let me see if I can bring this in. We will make this Buckby. Here we go. Okay, and then I'll just crop this so you guys don't see anything private. Screw it. We're not going to crop it. Okay, so this is my representative. For those of you asking about upcoming bills, there are currently thousands of bills being proposed. This is a fine example of those who believe the solution to our financial crisis is more taxation of residential and commercial property. Now, I don't know if this bill will even make it out of committee, but it's one of many that I will be opposed to this year. We must do better than this for Connecticut's present and future financial concerns. So, short version is, good on Billy Mo Buckby. Good on Billy Mo Buckby, and I'd love to hear the other representatives in our area chime in as well. So like I said, I'd like to hear them chime in on this bill. I'd like to hear folks like Billy Mo Buckby chime in on a host of other bills that we're going to just run through. Senate bill. So there's proposed bill number 55, I got to pull this up. Proposed bill number 55. Which I don't have out. Do I not have that out? Come on. Here we go. Senate Bill number 55. This is proposed by Senator Anwar in the 3rd District. An act designating racism as a public health crisis in the state and establishing a commission to study the impact of institutional racism on public health. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in the General Assembly convened that the general statutes be amended to designate racism as a public health crisis. What are we doing here, folks? As a public health crisis in the state, and to establish a commission to study and make recommendations on the following. 1, institutional racism in the state's laws and regulations impacting public health. No, I'm not even reading more of this. Racial disparity present in our criminal justice system. Disparity is not discrimination. Disparity is disparity. The fact that there is a difference in the end outcome is perfectly fine. If short people tend to commit more crime than tall people, then that's going to mean that more short people are going to be in jail. If men commit more crime than women, you're going to see more men in prison. Maybe we should look at systemic sexism in the prison system. Maybe we should tell women, hey, listen, you guys are going to have to go to jail and serve much longer sentences than we're giving you because we're going to have to make up for it. Or maybe, a certain number of men who've raped women are going to have to be able to just get away with it, so we don't have as many men in the prison system. Maybe we make certain laws, like sexual assault. Maybe we make their punishments a little less harsh on men than on women, so that we don't have as many men in the prison system. Yeah, you guys are opposed to that because it's ridiculous. Because this is ridiculous, and I'm sorry, but we all know where this is going. To study the impact of institutional racism on public health. I think this was also, this is basically the same thing as, and this is going to be proposed bill number 122. Excuse me while I pull this up. An act establishing a unit within the Division of State Police to investigate hate crimes and criminal acts committed by extremist groups. So the left likes to talk about dog whistles. We all know what this means. This is a cram down on one political side of the aisle. We all know what this means. And the reason we know what this means is because we know how hate speech laws have been treated in other countries. We've seen it in Canada. We've seen it especially in the UK. We saw Mark Meacham go to prison over a joke. He taught his cute little fluffy, adorable little pug to raise his paw like he was doing a Nazi salute. And the reason he was doing it was because his wife, his girlfriend at the time, was smothering the dog and treating the dog like a princess. And he thought it would be funny if the dog that got treated like a princess responded to commands to Heil Hitler, right? And remember, for YouTube, for those of you watching at home, I'm using the phrase Heil Hitler in the context of quoting somebody else because there's no other way to go about this. Senate Bill 122, folks, we all know how this is going to get used. So I would be definitely wholly against this. Not to mention that this bill doesn't even define what a hate crime actually is. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in General Assembly convened, that Chapter 529 of the General Statutes be amended to establish a unit within the Division of State Police to investigate hate crimes and criminal acts committed by extremist groups. We all know what extremist groups means. We all know what that means. Libertarians, Republicans, anyone who isn't a Maoist. And the reason we know that's the case is because that's how they've talked about us. That's how the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes of the world talk about the proverbial other side of the aisle. This is how you get to Ted Cruz attempted to murder me. This is how you get there. And folks, I get that she's a radical within the ranks, but she's in office. Just like all of these other senators. Senator Anwar proposing both of these past two bills we just mentioned. Okay, let's talk about we talked about a previous senator, Haskell. Let's talk about another one he's going to proposing. This is proposed bill number 125, an act limiting multiple handgun purchases in a 30-day period. Being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in General Assembly convened, that Title 29 of the General Statutes be amended to prohibit a person from purchasing more than one pistol or revolver during any 30-day period. One pistol or revolver? Are you nuts? You realize that collectors purchase revolvers all the time, and they don't even intend to use them as actual firearms. Also, I have no idea how limiting the number of guns you can purchase in a 30-day period. If I buy a Glock tomorrow, can I buy a 45 in 29 days? No. What part of shall not be infringed do you guys not understand? I have no idea. If you can't buy any guns at all after you've already purchased a firearm, I have no idea how that would be conveyed as constitutional. So I talked about all kinds of bills that are terrible. And honestly, I don't have time to go over all of them. That's why we kind of ran through the last three. And they're coming from, again, the radicals within your ranks. So we on the proverbial right side of the aisle, and yes, I'm lumping myself in as a libertarian with Republicans, we have pushed the radicals to the fringe. There's a reason. There's a reason you don't see actual Klan members getting on Republican tickets. There's a reason Richard Spencer will never get elected to office. Even if he ran on the Republican ticket, he would never get elected to office. There's a reason why when a sitting senator in Alabama says something that's kind of racist, right, and kind of reveals his true colors after, towing a line for a while, there's a reason he gets yanked off of all of the Senate committees. There's one side of the aisle that is happy to force the radicals within their ranks, which we have, to the fringe. The other side, again, is electing them to office and allowing their legislation to come to the fore. Not the floor, the fore. So, Democrats, like I said in that other video, you guys have got to reel these radicals within your ranks. You got to reel them in, or I hate to say expel, but you've got to do something about them. That's on you guys, not on us. And otherwise, things are going to get a lot worse, not better. Now, I did mention that I like to talk about bills that I like too, and there's a tiny, tiny dropping of them. In fact, the only one I can bring up is proposed bill number 5007. So excuse me while I pull that up, and I'll read it out for you guys. An act withdrawing Connecticut from the agreement of the states to elect the President of the United States by national popular vote. So this is a withdrawal from the National Popular Election Compact. Being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in General Assembly convened, 1, that Section 9-175A of the General Statutes be repealed, withdrawing the state from the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Great. Wonderful. And I would love to hear my representatives and senators chime in on this too. I would speak before the floor on your behalf gladly during public comment to say that why it is we are forfeiting our vote to the results of the national popular election is beyond me. If Donald Trump had somehow managed to win the national popular election in terms of popular votes in 2020, if he had done that and Connecticut had voted blue, would you guys be in favor of sending our electors on the left? This is a message to the left. Would you guys be in favor of sending our electors to D.C. to cast the ballot in favor of Donald Trump? How about in 2024 when we're not going to likely see Donald Trump? We're going to see somebody probably let's say we see Ben Shapiro, right? And I'm saying that because I know it's going to trigger the other side. Would you be in favor of having your electors cast a ballot for Ben Shapiro, even though 80% of Connecticut, let's say, voted for Joe Biden? Would you be okay with sacrificing your vote to the national popular election? Because in Connecticut is never going to sway the popular vote. There's not enough people in the state, which means that if no one votes in Connecticut, people talk about a vote in California not meaning as much as being worth as much as a vote in Wyoming. Okay, if we do this, we've already signed off on the National Popular Election Compact. If this comes to fruition, now our votes don't matter at all. Now in Connecticut, our votes count for actually nothing, because we're forfeiting our votes to the results of the national popular election. So, proposed bill number 5007 to withdraw from this compact, great bill. Now, it's a drop. It's a tiny drop in an ocean of terrible that I've talked about. And for that matter, an ocean of dumb legislation that isn't just bad, it's also dumb. And on that note, let's wrap up the show with some housekeeping, not really housekeeping, but let's let folks know what's going on with the channel. So since we talked about dumb, now we're seeing some dumb memes. And I'm going to, as a result, bring back dumb memes from the left. So hopefully by Wednesday, which is what I've usually been releasing our episodes of dumb memes from the left, I'll be able to get this week's episode out. Check out my MeWe page because I am moving to mostly MeWe for my social media because they seem to be significantly, less cancel culture-y than Facebook. So the link is in this video's description as to where you guys can follow me on MeWe. Dumb meme has already posted, so chime in on the dumb meme on my channel on MeWe, and the best comments will make the episode. So get those comments in, and hopefully you'll make the video. Also, I want to let people know to check out my other channel. It's called Mike Reads. We had a video that I released tonight while the show is actually going on. Because I can schedule these posts. We read a little bit of Thomas Sowell, did a little bit of analysis of a read in Thomas Sowell's Economic Facts and Fallacies. I believe I have that link in this video's description. If not, do a search on YouTube for Mike Reads, all one word, and you'll find my channel, and you'll see tonight's video. We'll have a book review out on Thomas Sowell as well, too, tomorrow night. So go ahead and check things out. Also, I'm looking into getting things backed up on Odyssey and Rumble. Odyssey is the front end of Library. There is a link in this video's description to my library channel. You guys can check that out. Odyssey is the front end that looks a lot more like YouTube did, 4 or 5 years ago, except without all the censorship. And I am looking into Rumble. Apparently, you need to verify your accounts there, so we'll see how things go over there. I'm not necessarily going to be moving off of this platform until I get kicked off, but just so folks know, I'm not conceding everything to Susan WikiWiki. We will be backing things up on more free speech supporting actual platforms. Also, since we're talking about news that's happening with me and this channel, I'll be moving this office hopefully next week. So this may be the last time you guys see this lovely office in the background in a live video. So guys, I'll keep you guys posted on all of that. There may have to be a temporary hiatus so that I can make the move. We'll just be moving to the other side of town. And like I said, for those tuning in from New Milford, I'll get that information out to you guys as soon as I have more information and as soon as the move has been made. That is because my business, Taylor Media, which I'll plug, taylormediact.com, is moving. I'm growing and I need a bigger office. So I'm moving into the Bleachery over on West Street in New Milford. So if you guys want to follow out what I'm doing in my personal life, you guys want to follow my business, it's not political in any way. It's just a media production company, which is why I have all of this nice audio and video equipment. It's taylormediact.com. If you guys have some media interests, if you guys know people that might be interested in bringing on somebody to help them with business-to-business media production, with live streaming, with live broadcasting, if you guys have an event that you guys need to be live broadcasted, I do have all of the mixing equipment, all of the microphone equipment, multiple cameras, switches, have everything you might need. check it out. Sample videos are on the sample videos tab, so you guys can get an idea of what I've been doing. TaylorMediaCT.com, TaylorMediaCT.com. All right, so this is usually where I do my Q&A. Since I don't see any questions from the audience, I'll just close by saying thanks to everybody who tuned in this week. Don't know when I'm going to have another live video, but I will be keeping you guys posted on all of this craziness coming in from Hartford. And hopefully I'll be able to have some people on the show to talk about all of the craziness coming in from Hartford and to help us clue ourselves in on what's actually going in there. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Don't know when we'll be back, but I will keep everybody posted because of the move, and we'll see you in the next one. Good night, everybody.